Live.
Namaskara and welcome all to the panel discussion on My Bharat Dreams for the Future, organized by Disha Bharat as part of My Bharat online youth campaign. I'm Sughosh Nigale from Bengaluru and I will be moderating this discussion. Let me welcome and introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Sahil Agarwal from Haryana. I'll give a brief introduction about Sahil ji. Sahil ji did his BTech from IIT Delhi and MA in Diplomacy from Jindal Global University. He belongs to Sonipat. He is director of Vision India Foundation, an organization in public policy and research. Welcome, Sahil ji. Our second panelist is Hamsa Devineni from Telangana. Hamsa ji is a practicing lawyer and an active politician based at Hyderabad. She holds an LLM in Admiralty and Maritime Laws from Tulane University Law School in USA. She teaches international maritime laws as a visiting faculty at Nalsar, Hyderabad, and Nalanda University, Rajgir. Welcome, Hamsa ji. Our third panelist is Shruti Rao from Uttar Pradesh. Shruti ji is a ancient scholar at Peking University in China and Frederick Bastiat Fellow at George Mason University in USA. She has been a research fellow and editor at India Foundation. Her research on topics of cultural nationalism, political ideologies, political systems, and diplomacy with a regional focus on India. Welcome, Shruti ji. Namaste. My first question to all three of you, same question. We are celebrating 75 years of Indian independence today. Before going to the dreams for future, if one dream that we have seen in the past and at the 75 years of Indian independence, we should have achieved it and we have not fulfilled it yet, what is that one dream? Hamsa ji, you can go ahead and answer this. Request you to unmute yourself, please.
Namaste, everyone, and a very happy Independence Day to everyone watching us today. It's been a great privilege and honor to be a part of this panel discussion discussing Bharat's future on this historic and auspicious day, marking 75 years of our independence. Today, I think in 75 years post our country's independence, as a country, we may have achieved many things, but its people have primarily achieved two things, freedom and independence on the individual levels. By freedom means that every person in India is free from external influence, threat, or power. But this was not the case in the past. So though the Constitution itself has guaranteed us a lot of freedoms, in reality, we don't see that people are really free on their individual personality level. So I think a simple example that comes to my mind is women in most households had no freedom to choose their partners in the past that we talked about. And they were compelled to marry persons chosen by their parents. But today we hear many voices of young girls saying no to traditional practices and even questioning their legitimacy in some situations. So this is because we've realized that the right to exercise freedom and make life's decisions is your own choice, and you're free from external influences in such situations. Similarly, like with respect to independence, we have seen that a lot of people have become more and more independent in today's generation than they were in the past. So by independence, we mean physical independence, emotional, mental, and also economic independence. When it comes to answering Sughosh's question about what is that one thing that we should have fulfilled in the last 75 years that we haven't, I think like any other country, India is also running against time, trying to develop economically and progress in as much faster pace as we can, with bringing the statistics on and catching up with the statistics. But what we've really forgotten is our indigenous culture and indigenous value system that we're all used to and that our ancestors have taught us. And we have forgotten all of that, and we are in the rat race, and we are following mostly the Western culture and their systems. So what I would like to majorly emphasize on today is where I envision India in the future and how I envision tomorrow's India is we know one thing for sure about the future of India, and that is that India's future will be determined by the youth of today. simply on statistical basis, because we all know that India is the youngest country in the world today in terms of its demographic dividend, and it has more than 62% of its population, in the working age group of 15 to 59 years, and more than half of its population is below 25 years of age. So what we do today is going to really determine what our future is going to be. And I think Mahatma Gandhi's most famous quote that most of us are used to, which is "be the change you want to see," applies to us most aptly today than it ever was. So I think India's future really lies on two pillars. And the first is, of course, the rat race, which is the progressiveness of its thoughts and actions of its people and its government together, which is the most common determinant of any nation. So this is going to determine your GDP, your economic growth, and all of that. And for India, I think there's a second pillar that we all are relying on, and we should be relying on, to make the leaps and bounds of progress in the future that we are all expecting ourselves to see in. And I think that second principle is going to be more important for us, and that is the inculcation of a value-based and a principled way of life in all its citizens. And we've seen examples of what's been happening with the recently concluded monsoon session, which is a complete ruckus, which I'll come to in a little later part of what I have to say. I think I believe in sayings of our saints that India has been a sacred land, and it is a sacred land. And I think the sacredness is primarily in the values and the principles that its people carry. So dependence on law or the public institutions, for that matter, the government, to bring about all the changes that you deserve or you want to see is not really the solution for the future of India. And the future of the country really lies in its people, and their actions, and the government and the institutions are only a means, to execute the people's will.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you
indeed.
can't depend on them to make a change of your life. So I think
Definitely.
values must become a way of life for every Indian citizen, and we should imbibe that. And that is our real secret to, seeing the country that we want to see ourselves in the future.
Right. I'll come to that, the further part of your point that you raised. Shruti, same question to you also. What is one thing we should have achieved at 75 years of Indian independence, and we have still yet not finished it, accomplished it?
First, I would like to express my gratitude for giving me this opportunity to express my opinion alongside such eminent panelists. The one thing that according to me, an aspiration that should have been fulfilled by the 75th year of our independence, but we haven't been as successful as I would want to be, is in the decolonization of our education system, of our textbooks, of our university, and of our schools. In the past many decades, our elites who control these systems were very westernized. So we see that we have adopted a lot of Western ideas, or ideas which are very foreign to us in our text and in our education system. But in the past few years, I see that there is a huge change that is not only being driven by this more enlightened political leadership, but also by our civil society, by our non-government organizations. And I see that this new education policy that came out a few years back has suggested a lot of interesting steps that can lead to the decolonization of our minds. So that is the answer to your question.
Yes, that's a very important part. I think the Western mindset itself is somewhere we have failed to eradicate that from our minds. Thanks for that. Sahilji, your comments on this. One thing we should have fulfilled it.
Thank you, Sughosh. I'll resonate with what Hamsa ji and Shruti ji shared. So if you look at the Independence Day, the Sanskrit term for this is Swatantra. It is not freedom, it is Swatantra, which by that we mean our means, Swatantra. So I think that is where we've largely lagged as a nation. We've become free, but we've not achieved the freedom of the mind or the freedom of the system, the freedom of the Tantra that we are using to govern ourselves. And I think I would not blame anyone. I think it's a matter of time that it will happen, and I am seeing positive signals of that starting to happen now, because after so many centuries of wars and colonization, it's very difficult for a country to pick up. So what we have achieved in the last 75 years is commendable, and I think now is the time for this kind of a civilizational reawakening, where we will see Swatantra actually being practiced.
Yeah. Thank you, Sahilji. Hamsaji, if we want to divide our dreams like into categories like short-term dreams and long-term dreams, not talking about the daydreams, because many are dreams that we see somewhere, we have no connection sometimes, or also many scientists have found answers to their questions, their riddles in their dreams. So that's also a fact. But consider, keeping in view my Bharat, my India, my country, if you want to categorize our dreams into short-term dreams and long-term dreams, how do you categorize, and what should be prioritized first on war footing, and what should be our long-term dreams? Hamsaji, yeah, you can go ahead.
So I think they always say dream big. So irrespective of how much of it you're going to achieve, I think our dreams have to be big. And how you prioritize them is, of course, the normally narrated phraseology in the terms, which is economy and development and progress. We have to keep a watch on all of that, and each of those departments have to work. And I think more than talking about the government and what the government has to do, I would like to emphasize through this panel discussion is that it's the people. I think the new generation and the new world is going to be the people, and more so the youth of India. So I think each of us, like Narendra Modi ji had said in his Independence Day speech today, that it's not just Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas, but it has to be Sabka Prayas. So I think each one of us has to work, and all of us have to have our own short-term dreams and short-term goals and long-term goals in order for the nation to build itself. And depending on how well we plan and execute our dreams, I think the nation will go forward in that pace. That's
Right.
the short answer to it.
Right. Shruti, what do you think? Usually it is said that, everybody's work is nobody's work, because when we say, we talk of many people, many Indians, or most of them talk about independence, but nobody talks about responsibility that is attached with independence. So that's there. So what do you think? What should be the, highest priority, utmost priority? I think you'll be focusing much on education, and you're very much expecting a very positive and a vibrant change through new education policy also. So is that going to be your priority for the future, dream of the future?
While education is, of course, going to be a major issue, I think on war footing, the issue that has to be solved is the idea of cultural nationalism in India, the idea of a common cultural idea for all Indians, no matter what their religion is, or their region is, what their caste is, or their gender is. Historically, we see that this idea was very clear to our ancestors. This whole sacred geography of India was covered with important tirthas, important pilgrimage spots and other places, and people from all genders, from all regions, from all castes used to travel around this country, no matter where they were from. And this idea that this land belonged to us was very clear to our ancestors when we refer to our scriptures, or when we refer to our holy texts, or even our historical literature. But we see now that there is growing disharmony in our society. There has been, because of our recent history in the past years after independence, and even before that, as a colonized nation. Because of that, these differences in our identity is manifesting in our political systems, in the daily news that we see, the differences that we are having in terms of political ideologies and other issues. And because of this, also many communities and people across India feel estranged or left behind from the national mainstream. So something that has to be done on a war footing is to establish this idea that all of us Indians are the common inheritors of this great legacy of ours and the great traditions of ours. And this whole adventure of nation building is our equal responsibility, and nobody, no society or no community in this Indian landscape should be left behind. So I think that is something that must be solved on war footing.
Sughosh, you're muted.
Was you're on mute, but I'm assuming you're asking me to speak. So I'll start sharing my thoughts on the short term and long term.
I'm extremely sorry for that. I just got okay. I'll come again on that. Shruti raised a point that bringing everybody in the mainstream is one of the priorities that we should address at the earliest. You are into research and public policies. Shruti raised one point, that is the caste system that we have. How do you think, is it that easy to eradicate caste system? That because there is a history of almost 1,000 years, 2,000 years. How do you think, how deep rooted the caste sensitivities among Indians, and in particularly youth, because we see youth as a modern representatives of modern India, but do the modern Indian youth, are they free from this caste sensitivities, caste systems? I'm not talking about Varna system, I'm talking about the caste systems that we have, because still at each and every level we have this system. We want it individual or don't need it, that's the second question, but we have it. So what do you think about this caste system, mainly having the kind of a sensitive and sensationalization among the youth? Sahil, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Sughosh, should I go ahead? Okay. Yeah. So I was saying that's a very interesting question of understanding our short-term and long-term objectives. I'll relate to what Shruti was saying. So for me, actually what Shruti was saying is a very long-term dream. I don't think it can be achieved in the short run, although I totally agree that we have to get into it on war footing because it will take so much time to do. The end result of this long-term effort that I would like to see is, can we have a dharmic polity, which means a state which facilitates the pursuit of dharma for its people. I think our current system does not align with it. In fact, it's in some ways it's contradictory. So we'll have to do a lot of churn, and this question of who we are, our identity, it becomes very important in answering that. I think till now, the problem that we were trying to solve was the problem of stability. As a nation, are we a stable nation? We took so many decades to prove to the colonizers that yes, we can exist on our own. And I think now it's the time when we invert the gaze and we actually start projecting our worldview, what we believe in, and create systems to depict that worldview. To achieve that, what I wish to see in the short run is a lot of economic change is happening in India. We recently saw the news of unicorns, right? So more than 22 unicorns added into the Indian economy just in these 8 months. I think that's historic. Why it is happening is because of this youth potential that we talk about a lot, and this youth potential is getting linked to research and innovation and education. I think this combination of education and economy, particularly when we channelize it towards entrepreneurship, that would be something that I would like to see more and more in the short run, because that is really giving a fuel to 1 billion dreams. So without allowing our people to express their potential, we cannot actually help them achieve their true potential. So I think that is a change that is happening. And in the short run, through the new education policy, through other mechanisms, through the Atmanirbhar Bharat idea, I think that is what all of us should collectively fuel. And then ultimately it will lead to some prosperity, and then it will help us answer the question of identity.
Yes, well thought, well thought. Hamsa, you are into politics. You have a first-hand experience of the politics. Do you see, obviously, politics and power and executive is one of the, is legislative is one of the major tool in a democratic setup through which we can achieve our dreams for future. Do you see equal grounds for youth in our democratic setup?
Of course, opportunities are all and sundry for those who can grasp them. But I think there has to be more encouragement for youth. It's not related to any party line as such. Overall, there has to be a good mix of youngsters and the seniors. And fortunately, this time in the recent cabinet expansion, we could see a lot of young faces, and overall average of our leaders and the entire parliamentary democracy has changed. Now it's come down to a great extent, the average age of all the parliamentarians. But I think youth have a larger role to play than what it is today. And because they're going to be tomorrow's future, I think we have much more role to play than what it is, but it's definitely not discouraging. Earlier, I think a 30-year-old to become a parliamentarian would be a difficult task, and it was not even conceived of. But now, with our great visionary leadership that we have, even 30-year-olds are being given tickets and they're becoming parliamentarians. And I think we've broken all historical records, and we've seen some of the youngest parliamentarians that India has ever experienced. And also, Sughosh, I would like to add to that caste dimension that you brought about. I think a lot of the youth don't anymore relate to that as a concept. And I think it's outdated. Maybe a lot of my friends may not agree to it, but all the educated youth, I don't think relate themselves to the caste system anymore. So maybe it's high time that we work ourselves and find better ways of categorizing ourselves and giving opportunities to different sections of society, more based on the proportional representation of their population would be a better idea than really giving caste-based classifications, because caste was basically the classification that the constitution had given was basically on social and economic reasons. I don't think now we would see somebody from a backward class, low or high anymore. We have people, staying with us and studying with us and, eating with us on a common scale these days. So caste, I don't think on a socialistic perspective is valid anymore in today's world. And so is economy. It's just, opportunities and maybe some reservations for really people who cannot afford it based on talent or based on their population proportionality. But caste as such, I think, is outdated to add to that. I also wanted to add to Sahilji's idea of dharmic principles, I think, which was very well taken up. I think that is what we have left out, and that can be really brought into as formal education also. Why not? We can bring in values and principles into formal education and make sure administratively also that people are complying to it. We comply with the offenses and the laws in India. Why can't we comply to the dharmic values and principles? And children don't know what the values and principles are, and it's only left to the parents' discretion to teach them, what values. And some families teach them, some families have forgotten themselves. So, we have to bring it into the mainstream and teach people what really these values and principles are and why it is important for us to follow it. And for those who don't follow, there has to be some means of compelling them to follow this. So I think that is something we should work on.
Right. Well received. Shruti ji, there is, in the initial of your opening remarks, you mentioned there is a lot of Western influence that we have, and still we have not come out of it. When we say the world is a global village and we can connect within few seconds, we have got 5G is on the anvil. In such an environment, how far it is fair to blame still the Western invasions in terms of thoughts, in terms of technology, in terms of religion, whatever it is. Instead of blaming the Westerners and the Western influences, should we at this point at least look at the loopholes of our system, our social strata, our social systems, the social layers, and our thought processes? Is it the right time to have an introspection at ourselves and get back to the work? So which one is more important, do you think?
So, Goshi, I completely agree with you. I think the baton is in our hands now, the youth. We have to do the deliberation. We can't keep continuing to blame our colonizers or our history for the state that we are in. It is time that we take, accountability of our state. We deliberate about the kind of political system, the kind of economic system, the kind of social system that will that we have to create on our own, that will serve the requirements of a new India, of the future of India, that can do justice to the natural characteristics of a unique country like India. I had to add something about the political system, for instance. This what I'm going to narrate is going to reflect so much about how we have internalized Western ideas without deriving much from our own reformers, thinkers, and from the ideas of our own philosophers, thinkers, and reformers. Like for the idea of democracy, we keep saying that democracy is a Western liberal idea that has come to India. But If you remember, philosopher Basavanna had introduced the idea of public parliament in India in 12th century AD, much before Magna Carta. Similarly, the idea of meritocracy that we now, the trend has become to look at the East Asian countries like China or Singapore or South Korea and say, oh, their systems, their political systems are far more meritocratic than ours. Then we should look at the texts of our own sages and saints like Shukracharya, who's writing Shukraniti Sara, has a great exposition on what kind of political leadership is required in a country, what kind of virtues are required in a politician, what kind of political system must be in place so that these virtuous leaders come take the helm of take the helm in a society and lead from the front. Our failure to read these texts, to make these texts commonplace, to derive inspiration from them and make them mainstream is something that we cannot put the onus on Western colonizers or Western intellectuals. It is our duty to revive them and to draw inspiration from them. And as youth, we not only must derive inspiration from them, but also see our present conditions and calculate what kind of comparative advantages India can have at this moment and leverage our ancient ideas and traditions and create new political systems, new economic systems, new social systems that can serve the requirements of the 21st century.
Great, Shruti ji. Sahil ji, so when you look at the youth, do you see the youth because if we see the past, see from 1901. We see the freedom struggle also. There was the contribution from the youth as far as the Krantikaris are concerned. The contribution was very high, but and the ideologies of youth also, they have changed time to time. Earlier, the role models for the youth, they were the sages. Later on, the role models, they got turned into rajas. Then the role models were sports personalities. Now the role models are your actresses, heroines. Nothing wrong in it, of course. People still had actors and actresses as role models in the past also. But when you look at today's youth, do you think that they're matured and they have understood their responsibilities with respect to their country, with their duties and everything? Because one of the things that's very common that's found in a youth is after their +2 or after their technical education, everybody wants to go to foreign countries. So that's what we have maximum number of bright students in many prestigious world organizations which are not situated in India but in foreign countries. So how do you balance between these? There is a great capacity that we have, the great capacity of youth, which is not being completely utilized by our system, by our society. So where do you place this kind of youth?
Thank you, Sughosh. It's a very deep question. I myself have been grappling with this because the kind of work we do, every day we are meeting new youth. So what I have observed is that this is not an either or kind of a situation. We actually have multiple sets of youth, and it's not that one kind of youth is only that. There's some sort of fluidity there. So what have we observed as an organization? We have observed what you're saying, that there are youth who want a good career, good money, good life. So they, after their 12th or after their graduation, they want to go outside, work somewhere, earn well, and settle there. We have also observed youth who are kind of confused. They don't exactly know what they wish to do, and they are in a state of exploration. And we've also observed youth who are very clear about the kind of contribution that they can make to nation building. And that's the kind of youth that we attach most to. That's the kind of youth who come to our programs. And I think even though so many youth, I mean, a majority of youth may not, feel so passionately about the cause of nation building, we don't need everybody, right? We only need a critical mass, a set of group of people who are ready to get on with it. And I think that is there. The response that we are seeing now when we announce some of our programs on, let's say, Swabhav and Swadharma, the kind of response that we receive when we announce a program on good governance, it would not have been possible 15 or 20 years ago. something very significant has shifted in the minds of youth because of the exposure they've got, because of the resources they've got. They're not thinking of traditional paths. So because they're not thinking of traditional paths, a lot of them are very openly exploring a nice, comfortable material life. But definitely there is a set of people who are asking deeper questions into how should they make the best use of their life so that they can contribute to their nation. And I think we should encourage, facilitate, identify, mentor, support such youth, because on their shoulders rests the future of this civilization.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Hamsa ji, coming back to again, political system and politics. Many youth, I mean, across the parties, there is a shortage of leaderships. So there is always a question. Of course, there are leaders, but it is a second question that how many of them deserve really that position or not. They might deserve it with their muscle power and money power, but do they have real caliber? Do they have the understanding of administration? Can they, take a meeting of IAS officers and pass, orders to the IAS, district deputy commissioners and all those things? That's secondary. So the youth who want to develop themselves in leadership qualities and come to politics, is it necessary to have a godfather in politics, or is there any person who has no any background of any godfather, who has no money power, no muscle power? Can he come and can he have a strong hold or can he make a career in politics in current situation?
That's a very good question, and it's a difficult question also for me. Being a politician myself, see, in terms of your first question, which is about whether it's important to have a godfather, I think more than just going by the narrative, I think we need to really analyze and see what the situation is. Godfathers are important to the extent that they guide you and they teach you. It could be your colleagues who are guiding you, who have more experience or more awareness or more knowledge about it, about how to go about things and what you should do and what you should not. And politics also is, though it's supposed to be it's not supposed to be a profession for anybody. It's more supposed to be a passion. It's not something that earns you money, or it's more of a service-oriented job that you take up. But godfather, to that extent that they guide you and they tell you the right and wrong and the good and bad, to that extent you need a godfather. But personally, I believe that as long as your inclinations are right and as long as you have the drive to do something good for the public and the people, irrespective of whether you have a political party or a godfather supporting you, I think people will realize what you are, and people will realize that you're there for them, and you're there to do something for them. And if it does not give you benefits in the short term, in the short term, long run, you will definitely be identified. And I think that will propel you and take you forward, irrespective of what you have or you don't. The second question was about muscle power and money. Today's politics is majorly influenced by muscle and money, and I would be lying to say it is not. And I think that is the biggest issue, or rather the negative of politics that we have, and that is the biggest pull down for everybody. So we have to work ourselves beyond that. And I'm sure tomorrow's politics is not going to be about progenies of political families who are trained to in the maths and science of politics, and it's definitely going to be for people who are nationalistic driven and who have patriotism in them, and who want to do maximum public good and honesty also, for that matter. We don't see honesty in politics anymore, and it's history now, and I'm sure it's going to be revived tomorrow, because that is what the youth is seeing. And youth is no more like the traditional ancestors that we have, like our parents or our grandparents' generation. They don't just follow the lineage and the belief systems that the parents and the grandparents carry. They want to examine and analyze every situation. They always analyze the right and wrong of the political milieu. And I'm sure because of the awareness and the digitalization and the availability of resources, the knowledge and awareness of situations has also increased manifold. So I think the reason even the Chief Justice of India in his Independence Day speech mentioned today that there is no right talent and knowledge available in the parliament, and that is why things are not going right. So if you take it, even the Rajya Sabha ruckus that we saw, they are goons. They are not people's representatives. That is not that's not. It's desecrating a parliament, irrespective of what happened there. Desecrating a parliament, shows the kind of people we are sending there. So I think we're falling short of talent, doubtlessly, and we are on the wrong path in terms of money and the influence of muscle power that we have right now. And that's what, nobody to blame or no institution to blame. And we were just carried off with what was happening to us, and we didn't have a direction. So whatever, we just swept by the wind. And now I think it's time that we have a direction, and I think we have this is the right time also, because if it's not now, it's never going to happen. And we are, the youth is in charge of the affairs now, and they're the best placed people to be taking this forward.
Okay. Shruti, do you see a silver lining in political setup nowadays? Because Hamsa ji, the incident that she said that happened in Rajya Sabha, that happened in Rajya Sabha. I mean, come on, it's not a Gram Panchayat or any local body. Of course, even many local bodies are much more. Some are much more. Have a very valuable discussions there. But this is not the way to conduct themselves in this. So in such a scenario, really, do youth have any faith in the political system, or do you think that there is a at least a silver lining where youth can come and join politics?
I actually hold a little pessimistic view of the situation, of the current situation, but I'm hopeful about the future. I feel that a lot of our historic problems, of our social problems, have manifested in their full vigor in our political system. Like our Western colonized mindset, because we adopted the democratic system exactly from the West, we did not improvise it to suit our national conditions. We see that our politics has so much, like it has largely become about electioneering, and the person who holds the most charisma, mass appeal, or the party which holds the most control over resources will undoubtedly win elections, instead of somebody, some leader or some party which is more concentrated upon delivering good governance or working in obscurity. So there is undoubtedly a race between parties to be seen in public, to project a certain kind of image, and so much money is being spent on these issues. More than that, our social divisions are being manifested in our political system in a very negative manner, when we see that identity politics has become so important that every time new leaders are brought into the cabinet, or any reshuffle happens, or in even state elections, the first thing that happens on our televisions and newspapers is there is a caste calculation, or there is a gender calculation, and these things take the bigger picture, instead of talking about what are the capabilities of our new leaders, what are the technical capabilities, or what are the academic achievements, or what are their experiences in good governance that can help them deliver important results in terms of better governance, in terms of them being capable of handling big data, or working with technology, improve the conditions in the society. In future, I hope that our political systems will political parties will do a reflection on these issues, and will try to reduce the emphasis on electioneering, and will try to come up with systems, appraisal systems for their leaders, that every year leaders are judged not on the basis of the kind of speeches they give in public all the time, or how they are seen in public or social media, but instead of how much of good governance are they able to deliver, how well they understand their public, what changes do they bring in constituency. So some transparent appraisal system has to be put in or introduced in our political parties, and a demand for this must come from our civil society, so that positive changes are introduced in our political system. Without these, I think the youth will find it very difficult to enter the system unless there is a transparent meritocratic order in place.
That's a very good point, Shruti ji, a very valid point that you raised. Sahil ji, before talking to we getting into politics or standing for elections and everything, the idea concept itself, there are several loopholes in our electioneering system also. For example, a person who has finished a double degree or a PhD, the value of his vote is equivalent to a value of an illiterate person. The value of a person who is, living on or not at all contributing in terms of GDP, not in terms of tax, but the person who is paying tax, the value of both the people is just one. So we have such several loopholes in our electoral system. So do you think there is a need to completely revamp the whole system and give a kind of appreciate, identify and reward the youth for their contribution, be it in terms of their talent, their intelligence, their inventions, their achievements that they want to do it in future? Do you think are we on the right track when we expect all these, when we are expecting and when we're talking about the dreams for the future?
So I agree that our election system is definitely a roadblock to a lot of reforms that we should see. My worry is that if a simple concept like simultaneous elections, if that is so difficult to implement, then the kind of reforms that you are suggesting, they are not in my immediate dreams or desires. But eventually, what would I like to see? You saying that can someone who is more mature or more aware about a certain issue gets a higher weightage? So the concept of delegative democracy or fluid democracy, I think we should definitely experiment with it, where I, as a person, I can say that my understanding on economic issues is not so good, so I better delegate my voting right to Shruti ji. So my understanding on security issues is not so good, so I delegate my right to vote on that particular issue to Hamsa ji. And till now, it was not possible because it requires complex technology. But since I come from a tech background, within the next few years, it will get more and more possible to have a foolproof system of voting with these kind of delegative rights. So that is where youth and experts will get the opportunity of contributing much strongly to the policy ecosystem, because then I can say that I can say to my community that I have these ideas about education, and let me represent you in the policy making when it comes to the field of education. So you delegate your vote to me. So my vote, rather than being one vote, it may become 100 votes, and that gives me the status of a local leader, right? Why should leadership only be restricted to geographies? It can also be sectoral or based on their domain expertise. And that's the kind of opportunity the youth is looking at. The youth is not looking for going to a village, not necessarily looking for going to a village and building a base of voters there and then having to stand up on every issue. I don't think that's the style of today's youth and future youth. What we are really looking for is that we have some ideas, at least give us a platform to share those ideas and give us a chance to implement some of those ideas. Now, with the advanced technology, it's possible. And I hope that once this simultaneous election thing is done and we have some more mind space to think of election reforms, we will move to a stage of bigger reforms.
A very valid and a very new thought, Sahil ji. Delegating the one's vote to another person who is expert in that particular field. We come to the conclusion of this panel discussion. One last question to all the panelists. Hamsa ji, what is your message to today's youth when it comes to dreams for the future?
My only message to youth is that it's not going to be, there are, like Sahil ji mentioned a little earlier in the discussion, that there are very few youngsters who are really nationalistic oriented. And there are very few of them who really think about what they want to do to build the nation and to contribute to building the nation. So I think it's not just the responsibility of a few to build this large nation. I think all the youths 100% absolutely have to take part in nation building. And we really have to realize that the responsibility is on our shoulders. And we have to get away with the belief system that it's the government that has to do everything for us. And the reason the country is in the state that we are today, after 75 years of independence, is because we've always blamed the government. We've always looked forward for freebies. And that's the way we've driven our country to go. So I think we should stop with that and really start to remind ourselves that it's not the government always that does everything for you and builds the heaven for you, but you have to really contribute to doing that. And how we do that is Prime Minister Modi ji has set the narrative for it, how the youth can contribute to nation building. It's Sabka Prayas. So everybody works in your own sphere in doing public good. So you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you are just a cobbler, you're a painter. You know, there's everywhere that you can do good to public. It's not necessarily that you have to do professional good, but you can show your values and principles. You're first a human being, and then you're a professional, then you are a businessman, whatever you are. So I think you have to exhume, and you have to show out your values and principles, and also teach people around you what values and principles are. Yourself live a dharmic way of life. How do you do that? You have to learn how you do that with spiritual gurus, your family. And my message to the youth is twofold. One is do everything you can in your own sphere of specialization to contribute to nation building. Two, try to inculcate a dharmic way of life, to live life, because in the short run, you might sound like a fool or a stupid person, but when all of you do it together, I think it will manifest itself to multiple layers of development and growth for the nation, because this is the secret, and this is the indigenous secret that only Indians have with them. And no other country has this kind of a secret, and I think that's the way, and that's the secret for us to really catapult ourselves to the place where we want to see ourselves.
Thanks, Hamsa. Shruti, your message to the youth.
So my single-minded belief is that India's future must be cast in the mold of its past, not its recent past, but its past over thousands and thousands of years. And I can break it down into 4 themes. Economically, when we think of India's economic past, there are many macroeconomic historians like Angus Madison, for instance, who have written that India as a nation used to command control over 25 to 30% of the world economy at some point. Not just foreign authors, even Indian historians and diplomats, one of whom is K.M. Panikar, wrote that India used to be the hub of commercial and cultural trade for a very, very long time in history. Indian Ocean used to be this area of free, open navigation and trade and cultural osmosis. India of 21st century must be exactly the same way. India should become a hub of economic dynamism, where innovation and wealth creation should be a normally accepted part of our society. We should be focusing on this, and we should leverage our demography towards these ends. Politics said, we should go back to our ancient thinkers and philosophers and derive inspiration from their writing, be it in terms of the strategic culture that Kautilya has proposed, or be it in terms of the meritocratic order that is written in Shukraniti Sara, or the writings of Basavanna or Tiruvalluvar. So these writings we must go back to, but also think that for our future, what kind of leadership is required and how that leadership can come about in terms of infusing ideas of meritocracy and technocracy in our democratic setup. Culturally, we do need to build bridges and encourage social harmony. Methods like reservation, affirmative action are required, but also is required the ideas of reconciliate all our people. The idea that we all are equal, we all are equally responsible for this national adventure of building the nation is something that that is to be understood by every man in the queue. Beyond that, I think education can be a very important tool towards nation building. Our history is full of people who were at the forefront of scientific advancements, innovations, technology, and also literature and everything. I think that can come about when we break the mold of the past. We have to create centers of excellence. We have to encourage critical thinking in our people. And for that, I think we should create an army of young people who are able to go abroad to different universities, the best universities of the world, and incorporate best practices from there and come back and give to India. While doing so, we also need people who are fluent in Sanskrit, who are fluent in our own cultural practices, so that our preparation for future is also grounded in our past. I think these 4 ideas are that I propose for the future of India.
Wonderful, wonderful, Shruti. Sahil, your message to today's youth.
Thank you, Sughosh. I think after a very long time, there is a generation which is as endowed and as aware and as exposed as this generation. without sounding too magnanimous, I think this has come after 1000 years at least in our civilizational history. I cannot think of any generation which was so well equipped in the last 1000 years than it is this. So our responsibility would be to actually use this opportunity. It's a truly historic opportunity. I'm not saying it's historic in the loose sense of just celebrating 75 years of independence. It's a historic opportunity when we look at a millennium kind of a timeline. So it's not just, I'm not asking the youth to leave up everything and get into nation building. We just have to do whatever we wish to do, our profession, our objectives, with so much of passion that it also starts helping the nation at large. So I would say that if not this, then what? And if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? That would be my message to the youth.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sahil ji. So in total, we have had 3 panel discussions from 1st to 15th August by Disha Bharat. The first one was on 1st August on the topic Remembering Ancient Glory. And the second panel discussion was held on 8th August on the topic Contemporary Challenges. And the third one we have just concluded now on the dreams of the for the future. For any society to grow and youth to nurture the knowledge and expand their vision, we need discussions and debates like this. And it is said that, and I quote, "I have never learned anything from a person who has always agreed with me," unquote. So such debates, exchange of ideas are an integral part and signs of vibrant and developing youth community. I thank all the panelists who have participated in our previous panel discussions. And today's panel discussions, Hamsa ji, Shruti ji, and Sahil ji, thanks for your valuable time and thanks for sharing your inputs and thoughts. I hope these discussions organized by Disha Bharat have benefited our youth. I thank Disha Bharat once again for taking such initiative. We conclude here our panel discussion. Thanks a lot once again. Namaskara, Shubham.